All right. So I maybe we should have an introduction if this is going to be a podcast. This is Brian.
This is Steve.
Yeah. And we thought we would. Steve was interested in learning a little bit of Ruby, and so we thought we would record it and sort of see what happened. So.
One other person out there in the world who wants to learn Ruby.
Yeah, maybe it's getting. What's that?
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, it's getting popular. So, and so this is Google SketchUp, which has a Ruby interface, which I think Steve has been playing around with a little bit. So, we're going to start with that. So, what have you been doing? Actually, just starting off.
Yeah. So basically, there's a handy-dandy tutorial that the nice people at Google, I assume, were sweet enough to put together. Here, I don't know if you can see at the top the path to that.
Right.
But yeah, if you Google the SketchUp Ruby tutorial, I think this will be the first thing that comes up. So I have really no experience whatsoever with Ruby. I've learned a little tiny bit of a few other languages, and I'm realizing that the syntax is a little bit different with this one. So I'm just kind of playing around with it, seeing what I can put together, and kind of just make sure it's working together with SketchUp in some kind of meaningful way. So
Cool. Yeah, and I guess to introduce myself briefly, I've been using Ruby for a few years, so I'm kind of curious to learn a little bit about SketchUp and all that, but also just to see what we can do with this, because I know you were interested in doing this as a possible project for work, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So let's look at the script that presumably you were generating these stairs with the script.
Yes. So the thing I was just working on was trying to have all the different variables that it's using be a kind of a user inputable kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, so I've never used this Sublime text editor before.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
Awesome. Yeah, it's the kind of it's become the sort of standard within the Ruby community. It used to be a thing called TextMate, but it's pretty nice.
Now, is there anything I need to do to tell it, hey, I'm working in Ruby as opposed to some other language, and I'm trying to use the like SketchUp, like load in the kind of SketchUp commands that it has access to?
So that's a good question. Right now it looks like it's in Ruby mode. I think if you look in the bottom right there, it says Ruby. If you click on that, it might give you options. Maybe not. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go. And so you can, and essentially this is just providing like syntax highlighting. It doesn't. I think it provides a little bit of language support. And I think even in the newest version of Sublime, which is Sublime 3, which I think is in beta right now, they allow you to you can click on function names or variables and find out where those are defined, which is kind of cool. One thing about Ruby though is Ruby is it's a little more loosey-goosey than a lot of languages. At least a lot of languages that are sort of more standard in the corporate worlds. And so it's harder for different editors and IDEs, integrated development environments, to sort of figure out where things are coming from, and you can define methods in a very on the fly sort of way. It's not the sort of thing that you normally start off doing, but and so it can be difficult to have a lot of the tools that you might expect from other languages. And Sublime also, I think, is even more specifically focused on text editing rather than being a whole IDE. So that's the sort of background there. Yeah, so let's look. And so you can see it's sort of providing highlighting here, and the highlighting you can see SketchUp and UI. Those start with capital letters, and so it's highlighting those as constants in the Ruby language because it knows it's Ruby, but it doesn't know that it's SketchUp per se. So yeah.
And then, again, with just tiny amount of this kind of stuff I've ever done, like when I work in VBA, which is quite a bit. A lot of times, you start like, for example, that first line. If I type SketchUp and dot, it's going to pull up like it's a drop down of all the different possible, things you can do in SketchUp, like send action or whatever. And I didn't know if there's anything you could load that stuff into here, so it would kind of say, oh, here are different options of this. But
There are, and I think I think with Ruby, I know I used to use TextEdit and Sublime as sort of a replacement of TextEdit, and it allows for that sort of thing. I think especially with a lot of the built-in stuff with Ruby and even Rails. If you can install plugins that support Rails and that sort of thing. You can even see Rails there. But I'm guessing that SketchUp is sort of more of an esoteric thing that may or may not be supported in Sublime. But it does, and so that's the sort of the thing about the integrated development environments, is that they'll analyze the libraries that you're using in order to figure out what's available, as opposed to having that supported through someone building a plugin. And what else was I going to say? The one way that it's sort of supported, I think it might be supported in Sublime. It's supported in some other things. Is if you can do tab completion on certain things, but usually it's like things like it's any sort of string that looks like a variable or a method name, or just a sequence of letters and numbers and underscores and whatnot, that's in any of your open files. And that's usually how it sort of takes care of that. Is if it has something that's available sort of in view, it'll use that and it'll let you tab complete. But nothing if you haven't typed it already, generally it's not going to tab complete it for you. Yeah. So, and actually, I looked at looking at this plugin specific. Unless you have any other questions about Ruby or Sublime.
Oh, not yet. There will be. I'm sure.
Sure. So looking at this script, I actually did look a little bit at the Ruby tutorial for SketchUp, and just noticing at the top there, this is how you sort of define a plugin that gets shown in the menu. Maybe we can see this. You can see it says UI menu plugins, add item, draw stairs. So if you go, let's just go over to SketchUp really quickly to show the folks at home. That's you go under plugins and then you click on draw stairs, and it does what the script does. That's cool. You can specify your things. And so if we go back to that's however many stairs that was. Right. So I'm just looking through this and sort of I'm thinking about things that I can get really picky about code, but right now I think I want to be picky specifically about the things that are sort of Ruby conventions and things that might be helpful there. So the one thing that I would probably do with this, let's see, input and the defaults, is I would probably make that a hash instead of an array.
Okay.
It's
what that is. I'm intrigued.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So a hash. So yeah, I mean, we might want to cover it. We might want to figure out what our audience is, but we'll probably cover different data structures, and a hash is actually one that's very, very common in Ruby, and it's used all over the place. So if you let's just knock that defaults line on 14 down one to make a space, and let's type it again. Say defaults equals, and then use a squiggly bracket, if you know what that is.
This one.
Yeah, that's the one. And so then we usually so this essentially allows you to store the same data, but you can sort of name it, which is handy. And so you can say, how do we name this variable? We can call it number of stairs. Maybe it would be like type number underscore of underscore stairs.
Okay.
And then a colon. I think this will work. Yeah. And then space 10. And then you sort of just reproduce that with a comma, and then do the same thing for each of the other variables. And then maybe even with like a new line after the comma, so that you can sort of have one line per variable, or one line per key. Hash is maybe you've heard of a key value store or a dictionary.
Yeah, in the like 10 minutes of Python.
Sure.
I guess they have this. Yeah. So okay.
Yeah, so that's essentially what this is, and it's just it's an association between one thing and another. So the number of stairs, that's a label. You can think of it as actually yeah, that's probably more like what I would call it, is like just stairs, because but it's called a symbol in Ruby, and actually I'll cover that in a minute here. We'll finish typing this out. Oh, and so one thing you can do, go ahead and hit that. You can. It's actually been a little while since I've used Sublime. Try highlighting those 4 lines: rise, run, width, and thickness, and hit Tab. See if that works. Yeah, hit it again. So that's handy. And one thing that I do, so this is a perfectly fine way to write it, but one thing I'll do a lot of times is if you put a new line before the S on stairs, and then tab that to the same level, and then take that last squiggly bracket and put it down to the same level as the first squiggly bracket. Yeah, and so to me that's just a little bit cleaner. You sort of easy to read when you're sort of scanning through the page. And so then, in order to rewrite this, so the defaults I see that asks for. Oh, what we're doing down there on line 24 is it's allowing you to create an input box. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So. I'm just like rethinking about whether this is necessarily a good idea. Like, we could totally do this, but I think actually since it's asking for. Okay. So I've gone back and forth in my mind about how to do this. So I was thinking, since it was asking for 2 arrays, that might be the way to deal with that might be to just do what you're doing before. But actually, I think a better way to do it is, at least in Ruby, a hash will allow you to have anything as the keys. So with Ruby, is it right if I request mouse control? There we go. Lovely. Is that an option? Aha. There we go. So I just want to type this out really quickly. You could, so the traditional way to write a hash in Ruby is you would say stairs, and this is still supported, but you'd say stairs 10, rise 8, and so on. And this is called affectionately the hash rocket syntax.
Hash rocket.
Because it looks like a little rocket. And this is a symbol. A symbol looks like a variable declaration, but it has a colon in front of it. And so we actually, I wonder if I can, for the purposes for this presentation, I want to play around with this to see if it's possible for me to swap control. Is it possible for you to hand? Request presenter role. Haha. There we go. Okay. Can you?
You still there?
Yeah, still here.
Right. Oh, there you go. All right.
So can you see my terminal here?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll use this to because you can use a Ruby terminal, and actually it would be good to have it installed in your computer, but I'm not sure how to do that on Windows, so I don't want to mess around with that right at the moment. But if you can say a equals string, that's straightforward. You could say a equals a symbol, and so that's something different. If you say b equals, instead of b equals that symbol, that string now. So a equals b, that's false. Those are two different things. But since a is a symbol, you could say a to string, and that would be those would be the same. Or you could say b to symbol, and those would be the same. And that happens a lot in Ruby. You'll see conversions from, well, a decent amount. You'll see conversions between symbols and strings. But essentially, a symbol is, if you're familiar with enumeration, it's a way of sort of storing a string-like object in as a number in memory. And so, like if you're in Ruby, if I type test over and over again in my script, it's not much, but it's using more and more memory each time you do that, I believe is the case. But if you do this, it's always referring to the same number in memory. And so it's more efficient and just sort of nicer. It's also a little bit easier to type because you just have to type a colon, and then you don't have to type another thing on the other side, like with a string. So let's go back to your screen. So did you get that? It's a little bit weird, the concept of a symbol, but do you get at least the idea of it?
You will now be placed into the conference.
Sorry, did you? I don't know if you heard that.
I'm back.
Cool.
No, I didn't hear the last bit.
Cool. That's fine. So you can see here in this hash, the hash that I just typed, it's a symbol is the key, and the numbers are the value. And you could, instead of using a symbol, you can use a string, right? And so I get rid of that hash. So this new syntax is essentially you're just it's just a simpler way to create a symbol to something hash. That if you have no colon there but you follow it by a colon and then put something as the value, it's gonna make a symbol as the value. If that makes sense.
Kind of the same thing as variable, or not?
It's not. A symbol is like a value, and so, like if you wanted to store in a variable like different states of something, like if you wanted to say, like that something was going through different states, like unsaved, processing, and then saved, like some financial transaction or something. You could just have like 0, 1, and 2 are your different states, and then you just have to somehow keep it straight that 0 means unsaved, 1 means processing, and 2 means saved. And what symbols allow you to do is you can assign to a variable a symbol saying the symbol is just typed out saved, or processing, or unsaved, and it's storing it as a number in the background. So it's efficient in the way it's stored, and it also just sort of, I think a lot of the reason why people use it is it looks nice in your it looks different in your text editor, and it's just generally a good way to go about things, is using symbols that way.
Like a dictionary, like you said, in that sense?
Yeah, some languages will call this sort of concept, a dictionary, and some languages you can only store certain things for the keys and the values in the dictionary. Like you can only store integers, or you can only store strings. Whereas Ruby is very, it doesn't matter. You will store whatever, wherever, and we'll take care of it. So there's good and bad there. Like if you're iterating through a hash, and there's different things in it, then that can cause problems. But Ruby is what's called a duct type language, which means that in that case you generally want to have everything be able to act the same. Like it always responds to the same method, and so I'm maybe getting a little ahead of myself. So we should probably deal with this particular situation, because I don't want to run away with lots of things I could say. So if we get rid of that second hash there, because I just typed that as an example, Yeah. And then replace. So cut and paste the different prompts as the keys. So like if you take the whole string, number of stairs, and you sort of paste that over stairs. Yeah, exactly. And then do the same thing for the rest of them. Oh, that's... Oh, yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. Yeah, that thickness is the last one there. Yep. And you got some extra characters there. So there you go. And then another actually convenient thing about Sublime. So actually, yeah, get rid of that. Oh, you have that extra line there. Probably want to get rid of. Awesome. So the nice thing about Sublime is it is this feature where if you highlight that first colon after number of stairs, and I think on the Windows it would probably be Control D. Yeah, and do that 3 more times. So now you've selected these 5 different things. And so if you do space, we're going to type a hash rocket in here. So space equals greater than space. So that's a nice little, trick.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so now what we can do is, so we can get rid of prompts, the line 13, and we can get rid of line 23. And I think if you double click or triple click, maybe it'll highlight the whole line. Or yeah, you can do that too. That's convenient. I might just be used to what the Mac does. Oh yeah, there you go. There you go.
So just delete?
Just delete.
Okay. And then line 22.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the list is the values. Wait, so what are the defaults in the list there?
I don't really understand the whole list thing. I think
Okay.
for the previous example, they had a situation where you can only pick one of 2 different variables, so like male or female.
Oh.
Those are the only, and you select one basically.
I see.
So I don't know if we can delete this or.
Yeah, that's a good question. If it might be the case. Let's try putting it without it, because it is possible. Well, no, maybe not, because you could have optional arguments for methods in Ruby. So the method here is input box, so you can't have optional methods, but it's not possible to have an optional argument followed by a required argument, and or at least it's not possible to specify. It's not possible to not specify list and then specify tell me about yourself.
Right. So could we replace list with just another comma and get rid of this?
No, like sometimes you're able to like replace it with nil, and depending on how well written the method is, it'll figure it out or not. So we could try that and see what happens. Let's maybe try that. It'd be fun to hit an error so that we can know. But I also have another way we can rewrite that if we want to. But nil, by the way, is the same as null in other languages. So it's
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, and it's 1L.
So do I go input box prompts comma defaults comma nil?
Yeah. And we'll just try it and see if it works. This is it's just 1L.
Oh, 1L. Sorry.
Yep.
Yep.
It even highlights it for you to let you know. And so what we can do, since prompts and defaults are no longer specified, We actually probably want to rename defaults to, well, no, defaults actually seems good. So change prompts to defaults.keys. And then at the end of the other defaults, put .values. And so these are two methods on Ruby's hash class which allow us to get as an array all of the keys from the hash and then all the values for the hash. And so really, you're essentially storing those two arrays that you were before, but you're storing them as a hash, which is kind of a more convenient storage mechanism in some ways. So let's, we've kind of made a number of changes here. Let's see if it still runs. Save it. And I always try to run things as much as possible so that if it fails, I know what went on, rather than having made a whole bunch of changes and then trying to figure it out. I'm about to draw stairs. Ooh, nothing happened. Did it? Does it have a way of seeing what errors came up? Is there? I saw there was a Ruby console. That might be it. Huh. Haha. There we go. Can't convert nil into string. Okay, so that makes sense. So my guess is, just from knowing about how the method is probably written, it's probably trying to go through an array. Well, no, it's probably nil is not an array, so it can't go through it. So maybe you can. It seems like maybe you can just pass a string in instead of an array. So try that. Just pass in, two quotes. Yeah, that's one thing about Sublime, is that if you highlight something and put it type quote, it'll put it around there. So get rid of two of those quotes because it'll be syntax error otherwise. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go. Awesome. Do you need to restart SketchUp in order to have it load again?
Honestly, I haven't tested it, but that's what I've
Yeah,
read.
that makes sense. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. And so if you hit OK, does it still run? It does.
I like it.
Awesome. So, okay. Sweet. Is there, I'm actually just out of curiosity, but go ahead and change the number. Oh, that's, awesome. So what's the, under Window, this is where you got the Ruby console. I'm kind of curious. It seems like there's got to be some way that you can like reload your plugins quickly.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Is there something under Window that because that's where you got the Ruby console? So no, no, I don't see anything offhand. Well, we can research it later. It's not a big deal for now. Okay, great. So that I think is a little bit nicer in some ways to stair width. Wow, it's going to be big. It's like a stadium.
Yeah, exactly. So we got bleachers now, which is nice.
Yeah.
It seemed like the number of stairs variable, something was going wrong with that.
Okay. What if you put in 0 for the number of stairs?
That's a great question. So, 2, 2,
Oh, is that 11 stairs? 12? Oh, that's interesting. We should probably figure that bug out. I mean, it's not, obviously not a terribly critical one. But.
I'm guessing I swapped the stair run in inches with the number of stairs.
Oh, yeah.
Let's try that. So yeah, I think that's what I did.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Input will get you. So that's interesting. Input will get you an array as opposed to giving you like a hash that you can access, which would be nice, but not the end of the world. Okay. We could actually probably go through it. Like if we wanted it as a hash, we could probably do it in such a way that we could get that. But I don't know if we want it, especially if we were using those keys, because then we have to type that whole string, and the string has to be exactly right in order for the hash to work. That's sort of one of the other advantages of symbols over strings and hashes, is because you can you're less likely to mess them up.
Okay, so like down here on line 33, where it says stairs equals input 0
Mm-hmm.
to whatever, can I overwrite that input thing and put number of stairs? Does that work?
No, because stairs, in this case, stairs is going to be equal to the string number of stairs. You need to get the value from the input, from the result of the input box. But it'd be nice. One of the nice things that you can do in Ruby is usually you can sort of play with things, like in the console, and you can put in a debugger. I don't know if you can do that with SketchUp, but we can probably put in some trace statements, like put in puts is a sort of standard way to do that. So maybe after the input equals UI input box, say puts input.inspect. And inspect is a method that you use a lot of times if you want to. It will essentially take an object, which in this case is going to be an array of integers or floats or something, and it's going to output it as a string. It's going to inspect is going to turn the object into a string, which is something that's going to look. It's going to allow the programmer to understand the structure of the object, and so it's sort of nice for debugging.
Okay.
And so yeah, let's see what happens. I think we might have to open up the Ruby console in SketchUp and then run this again and see what input looks like. And another thing I'll do when I'm debugging is like for these boxes, you might like change all the values to something that they aren't already, and maybe like make it like just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Sure.
And then so it outputted that array, and that's exactly what we would expect. That's one very small stair.
One very small stair.
Okay, so that's what we expect. That's good. So something must have happened.
Still, it should have been 2 stairs, right?
It should have been number. That's a good. No, that's a really good point. So what's the algorithm look like? Is it directly from the tutorial, or is it something that you were poking with?
Oh, this thing here.
I
screwed around with this. Like from the tutorial, it didn't have any kind of a user input. It just
Mhm.
had lines 28 through 32.
Yeah.
Variable. Yeah. And
Let me actually. Something just occurred to me. So I remembered something about Ruby that's nice. Is that you can actually assign all of those variables in one line. It is actually this sort of nice convention. So let's do get rid of the puts there on 25, and say stairs, comma rise, comma run, comma width, comma thickness. And you can see here there's that sort of tab completion going on. So you can even hit down if you want to refer to any of those variables that are there as you're typing.
okay.
And then say equals input. And what that'll do is it's like saying input equals stairs 0, or sorry, stairs equals input 0, rise equals input 1, run equals input 2. So it's really nice. So you essentially, if you know that you're going to have an array, you can do that. But of course, you're not doing the to float conversion. So let's do another Ruby convention here, which is our Ruby method is if you say dot map
For the input?
on the input,
Okay.
and then space squiggly bracket, and then pipe, if you know what that character is, yeah, and then V,
I'm sorry.
V, the letter V.
As in Victor?
That's right. I'm gonna tell you what to type, and then I'll explain it in a minute because there's a lot of stuff going on here. And then another pipe, and then space V dot 2F.
Number 2? Or
No, two like it's down below, yeah.
okay. 2 probably underscore, right?
Yeah. And then space, just to sort of, I like that. This is the sort of syntax that I've seen a lot, and it's what I tend to stick to. Some people don't always put spaces there. I feel the spaces make it a little bit clearer. So this is one of the things I like most about Ruby is how you can run through enumerable things with a lot of ease.
Did you say ruble?
I think I said enumerate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
So there's
Something to do with.
yeah, there's a module in Ruby called enumerable, which gets mixed into a lot of things like arrays and hashes, which allows you to enumerate over them in a lot of different ways. And one of the simplest and most convenient ways to do that is through map. And so essentially what you're doing is you're taking input, which is an array. In this case, let's say it's an array of integers, or it actually might be an array of strings now that I think about it, because it's coming from a text box where you can put in anything. And it's taking this array of strings, and when you call map on it, you give it what's called a block, and that's what's in between these squiggly brackets here. And a block is like a function. It's very much like a function. It's an anonymous function, and it takes a variable in, which in this case is v, and it does something with it. In this case, it calls 2f on it. And in Ruby, you don't ever have to call return on. Well, if it's the last line, you don't have to call return to return the variable, return the value. So here, essentially, you're defining a function which takes in a string and outputs that string converted to a float, and then since that block is being passed to map, it's calling that function on every single item in the array, and it's returning the result. And the result that's returned is being assigned to stairs, rise, run, width, and thickness. So it's a lot. I mean, this is one of the things about Ruby is that it's so clean and elegant, and like you don't have to type as much to get what you want, but it's also like a lot of information is packed in there. So did you understand all of that?
I wouldn't say I understood all of it. I think I've got a general idea that little twinkly thing we put on takes all the things before it, does the same thing too, which is converts it to F. And yeah, so beyond that, I'm a little punchy on it, but
Yeah, totally. That's perfectly fine. It's entirely understandable. I think blocks are sort of if you've programmed before, blocks are a little bit of a shift in thinking. But they're one of my favorite things about Ruby that make it really fun. So let me actually also let me leave it at that. There's an even simpler way to write this, but I won't even get into that because it's not necessarily as intuitive. So it's just convenient for when you're sort of more in the thick of things. So let's get rid of all of the rest of that stuff, the assignments of stairs, rise, run, width, thickness, and see if this code works.
wait,
No, sorry, like line 28 through 38, or if you want, just 34 through 39 or 38.
This here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And yeah, let's see if that works. Because again, we want to iterate as much as possible. Another big thing in the Ruby community is writing tests for your code, which allow you to you write a script essentially that puts in, a lot of times it'll put in values for your code and it'll see what the resulting values are, or it'll test the way your code affects the database or whatever. And so it's very big in the Ruby community to write these sort of tests so that you can iterate very quickly and build your software without falling back on creating the same bugs that you've already fixed before a number of times.
Okay.
So we can get into that later, but so this seems to have worked so far. There you go. Yeah. Cool. It's interesting, the variety of different patterns you can produce with this method here.
So let's see.
9, 10. So it was supposed to be, the number of stairs was supposed to be 20, right?
Right. So the thing I'm noticing is that it's returning in a different order than what we have it typed here. So in the code, we've got number of stairs as the first element,
Mm-hmm.
and then stair rise, stair run, stair width, stair thickness. In this, it's asking us stair run first, then the number, then rise, then width, then thickness. So I don't know why that would be.
Interesting. Is this so I might have let me look something up really quickly, because the version of Ruby can affect how this works.
Okay. I remember in one thing I was on, and I think it would have been Python, they said like the one kind of list type thing like this, it was kind of dictionary kind of thing. It seemed like it wasn't sorted or was sorted or something like that.
Yeah. So hashes often aren't they don't preserve order, I think is the term that's used.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
And so, like, if you try hitting cancel, and in the console, or maybe you don't have to cancel, go to the console, and type Ruby version in all caps with an underscore in between. Okay, that explains things. So, in 1.8, hashes did not preserve order, whereas in 1.9, hashes do preserve order.
They're now the long arm of the law.
Yeah, exactly. They have a badge now.
They've been deputized.
Okay, so that explains things. So that makes my advice, well, as far as Ruby 8 goes, I mean, Ruby 8 is kind of getting a little old in the tooth now, so I guess that's why I sort of assumed that this would be 1.9. I don't know if that depends on, maybe we can research this more in a bit, but that's definitely something we should pay attention to. And I think actually it's possible, let's see, Ruby word hash. There is a class that will let you have ordered hashes, but it seems like it's part of active support, and I don't know what would be required to use that. So maybe we'll just not bother for the moment. Okay, let's just not bother for the moment. So we can rewrite this if it's, well, let's do you know if it outputted the order of the prompts differently the first time you did it than the second time you did it?
No, I think it's been pretty constant throughout.
Okay. Yeah, I'm assuming in the background when it stores the hash, it's storing it in some order that it cares about, which I'm assuming is going to always be the same for the same inputs, but I don't know that for sure. So what was it? Number of stairs, stair rise, stair run. What was that when you actually run it? Right, number of stairs is at the top. So let's try the 10, 20, 30, 40 to see how many stairs it creates this time. Yeah, you might want to delete the stairs or not. I don't know. 40.
Yeah.
So number of stairs here is 20. And yeah, that doesn't look like 20 stairs to me. Is that 10? Okay.
And really thick stairs.
Yes, indeed. So let's look at the script again.
Yep.
And further down, I'm curious to see how these variables are used. If maybe the wrong one was plugged in, or if the right. Okay. So it comes down here to the add face and the push pull. Yeah. Okay, so I see what it's doing here. I used SketchUp once briefly a long time ago, so I get the idea. And I guess to explain to the audience here, the idea is you can add some sort of two-dimensional object in space in SketchUp. Yeah, maybe you can demonstrate like a square, and then you can push or pull that and make that into a 3D sort of object. And so that's what this script is doing in a more automated fashion. Yeah, you can do it in a sort of crazy way, pulling everything everywhere. So if we look at the script, let's see what it's doing. So it's saying for step in stairs, so we're considering each. So the number of stairs is going to be some number like 10, and we're going 1 to the number of stairs. So we're iterating from 1 to 10, and we're given the variable step, which is going to be that number for each iteration. It's going to be 1 or 2 or 3. And so x1, these are going to be coordinates x and y. This is, I assume that x1 and y1 are the start coordinate of like the one corner, and then x2 and y2 are the opposite corner.
I think so.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Right. So the point. Oh, I see. So it's creating point objects which are passed into the add face. The point objects are x1, y1, x2, y. So it's just all the different combinations. So essentially, I think we're passing in all of the different coordinates, but we're keeping the same z coordinate in space. And so we're essentially, that's why they all end up right against the wall, is because I'm assuming they're all being built right against the wall and then being pulled away from the wall by the width, right, which is the, oh, interesting, x2 is the width.
Yeah, I think so. X and Y, those are kind of defining, like if you were here.
Yeah, and in space would be good, yeah.
So you would be doing it kind of like the first thing is this, and then it's starting out at whatever height z is at. Right? So the first one.
Oh,
would be,
I see.
You know, like that. And then the second one would be like that, and then offset that way a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then down here, after that's all done, so it creates that new face with those 4 points.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does this push-pull thickness thing into, I guess I'll call it vertical, but it's really along the blue axis is how it defines it.
Right. That's because that makes sense. Cool. Okay, got it. So the problem, it seems to be that we're passing number of stairs as 20, right? And it's only generating 10 of them.
Yeah, that's right. And it did work before.
Right.
So I think somehow this, like you say, the order is just not getting preserved here. So, for example, when we're putting, a value in the number of stairs, we're typing 10, but then that value gets stored for like rise or run.
Huh. Interesting. Oh, right. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Okay, I see what you're saying. So we have a fixed ordering of stairs, rise, run, width, and thickness. So, yeah. So that means that, yeah, we might have to go back. Well, yeah, I'm sure I could think of all sorts of clever, somewhat more complicated ways to do this, but it might be better just to go back to sort of how you had it before.
Yeah, I mean, however you think's best, sure.
Yeah, no, go ahead and do that. I'm just sort of staring at it because it is my job and my habit to try to think of clever ways to do things, but
I like
we don't.
clever ways.
Yeah, but I don't think we necessarily want to be too clever for the moment.
Okay. So let's see. We had that.
Actually, let's undo that. Let me show something else that maybe will do the same job, but it's a yeah. So take the squiggly brackets and turn them into square brackets. What we're going to do is we're going to make a two-dimensional array, which is actually going to be a very definite order that's specified. But rather than specifying two arrays, we can just specify the one array.
So this squiggly bracket here, right?
Yeah, change that to a square bracket.
And then this one down here.
Mm-hmm. And then yeah, get rid of that extra. Sublime likes to put in extra things for you there. And then if you highlight, this is just another sort of trick of Sublime. If you highlight, if you start your mouse just before the first quote, and drag all the way down to just before the last quote, or the last first quote there on it's just sort of, yeah, exactly. And now hit the Alt key. Is that going to work? Oh, no, sorry, I'm thinking of TextMate. So instead of doing that, get rid of the selection and do the same thing, but hold down the Alt key first before you start selecting. So and hold it down the entire time. Is that letting you do that?
No, it's not doing anything.
Okay. Okay, well then maybe we'll just do this the hard way then. Just put a square bracket in each of those places. Sublime, there is a mode that Sublime lets you do a block entry mode, and so you could do an entry of all of the brackets all at once.
So are we going to put the brackets around number of stairs, or the whole number of stairs arrow 10 thing?
Number of stairs arrow 10.
So like that.
But still with a quote there.
With a quote here?
At the before the N.
Like that?
Yeah. And then after the 10.
To that.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and then Sublime, if you just hit the thing, it'll, yeah. And then, so we'll do the opposite of what we did before. If you select the for the first line on number of stairs, if you select space equals greater than space, maybe it would include the spaces around it too, and maybe get rid of the last space because we want to select the other ones too, and do the Command D, and it'll let you select the other lines, and then just type comma.
Okay.
Yeah, and now what we've now defined is an array of two-dimensional arrays.
Oh, cool.
And so what we should be able to do down below is, instead of saying defaults.keys, we can say defaults.map. There's actually might be a simpler way to do this, but map, yeah. Let's try this. Do parenthesis, ampersand, colon, first.
The word first.
The word first, yeah. And then end parenthesis. And then change values to do the same thing, but do second instead of first. Hopefully this will work. It may or may not. Oh, this actually it won't work because you're using 1.8. So never mind. Well, try instead of second, do last.
Okay.
And let's see if this works. Stairs. Wrong argument type symbol expected proc. What's the? This is on line 24. So what's the line 24 look like? It's still coming up for me. Okay, line 24. Defaults map. Expected proc. Oh, right, because we're using 1.8. Okay, sorry. I used to use 1.8 all the time, and now I'm just so used to 1.9.
So are there really a lot of differences then?
There's some pretty critical differences that I use a lot. There's a few critical differences that sort of I was always itching for when I was using 1.8, and now I'm just very glad to have them in 1.9. So we should, if maybe before next week, we should see if we can get you on 1.9.
Now, is that something that's internal to SketchUp, or how does that work?
That is a very good question. Let me sketch version. Yeah, it looks like it's built in, so maybe that's not possible. SketchUp 1.9. Okay, so there's some information out there, but I don't want to research it right now while we're live. So let's change the map first to more like the syntax that's below the map squiggly bracket v. But essentially, what we're going to do is yeah. Yeah, Sublime can get in your way like that. I assume that there's some sort of way to turn that off if you don't like it, but
Okay. So map, we're going to do
the V.
pipe.
Yeah, maybe instead of V, do A. Just it's a little more syntactic to say A since these are arrays that we're mapping over.
Okay.
And we say A dot first. Sorry, A is passed in, and then instead of doing like below we have the V dot 2F, we want to do A dot first.
Okay.
And then we do end squiggly bracket. Yeah. And you can see that this is the sort of syntax I was going to not do before, is the sort of map parenthesis thing, but we'll just go with this.
So A again?
Mm-hmm, yeah. And then A dot last, yeah. and save it and see if that works. This is using, by the way, the ability in Ruby to say there's convenience methods to have to say first, which gets you the first item in the array, and a convenience item that gets you the last item in the array. So as we're going through each of these two-dimensional arrays, in computer science terms, that'd be called a tuple.
Yeah. I remember that from Python.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going through these tuples, and you're getting the first element and the last element, which is just the first and the second item, which is the case in is the label and the default value for each of these cases. So let's see how this goes.
So this looks better. It's asking about number of stairs first, which is what we
Yeah,
for.
totally. And let's see how many stairs we have.
10.
10. Wonderful.
Let's see. Rise.
Go.
20.
We want to go backwards, maybe from 50 or 60. Is that where you ended up?
Sure, we can do that.
Yeah. Width. Oh, I'm measuring. Good. Nice. Inches. 50. Awesome.
20,
20.
yeah. 30, yeah. It's looking good. All right, let's try it.
I'm also just kind of curious what would happen if you typed the numbers backwards. Wow. Okay. Yeah, it's 50 small, not easy to access stairs.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily want these going to your basement, right?
Yeah. So maybe let's do one more thing while I think we're getting to be around an hour, I think, that we've been recording. So
Yeah.
Let's do one more thing, I think, before we go. I definitely would like to explore more later. And you could, of course, explore more offline, because this is fun stuff. So I think it makes sense to make these two different methods. One that gets our values, and then one that actually does the drawing.
Okay.
And so maybe if we created a method called, get inputs or something.
I got you. Okay. So this draw stairs thing is one. This whole thing is one method. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I should probably make that clear. So you have the def, and the tabbing helps here, but basically it's def, and then until you have that matching end, that's the entire function. And usually you want to keep your functions, in any programming language, you want to keep your functions as tight as possible, but you also don't want them to be pointless. And so I would, define another method.
So for this part now.
Well, let's since this one's called draw stairs, I think the second part makes sense for the draw stairs method. So maybe above it, because we can we can split it easily enough.
Like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then yeah.
What do they call it? Is it
Draw stairs, yeah. As if it's I imagine the method controlling someone who's walking down the street with drool and dirt, that they're drawing stairs. That's a bad joke on my part. So let's make this method actually take the arguments of the different parameters.
I'm sorry, what's that?
So do you know how to have a method take arguments? Because we're going to need to pass these inputs into into the draw stairs method.
Okay, so is it with in some of the things? I guess it would be with parentheses and commas. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I think you need to not have a space before the parenthesis, but that's the gist of it.
So am I like that?
That's perfect. Yeah, and you want to keep the names the same because you don't have to change your algorithm.
Right. Stairs. Rise.
Awesome. And then
Like that.
yeah, just like that. And then what we should do is get rid of all of that commented stuff from line like through 26 through 40, so that we have exactly. And so what we can do is also get rid of on 25 the stairs, rise, run, width, thickness equals, but leave the input map.
Like that. Get rid of that.
Get rid of all that, and maybe put a space to indent it there. And then and so what this is going to do is, like I said before, in any function, we were using an anonymous function before, but this is just a regular old function called getInput. Is it will the last line that you've specified will return, even if you haven't said return.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to say return stairs, comma, whatever, rise, run. It just does that.
Right. This map will return an array of float values, and so you'll just the result of getInput will be those values. And so what we can do, actually, this is my fault. Undo what you did there with the deleting, and actually cut that. Control X, and then put a space, and then above line 8. Paste those in, and then say getInput.
Says equal getInput.
Equal getInput. Yep, that's right.
Okay.
And then maybe get rid of that space there, so that I'm can be picky about the indentation on the beginning of line 8. And then you can, if you put parentheses after draw stairs, excuse me, or actually you don't have to put parentheses, but and then with no space before the parentheses, and then paste again into the parentheses to pass those variables in without the equals. And then essentially you're getting those variables out of the getInput method and you're passing them into draw stairs.
Okay.
And so that's sort of more if you're going to use this script in general, and if you were going to build it further and sort of maintain it, this would be a lot better, because you could do different ways of getting inputs, or you could read inputs out of a file, and then put them into the draw stairs method, so you don't necessarily always have to get it out of a dialog box.
Okay, so getInput with like the way we have it set up here, that would be one option to put variables into it, but you wouldn't have to do it that way.
Right, and it might even make sense to rename this method getUserInput, because that specifically is, as opposed to like getFileInput or like whatever you might want to call it.
I gotcha.
So, but that's not it really depends on sort of what we want to do with this, and we may want to as we make these recordings, we may want to build on the script, or we may want to do other things. But it's good to have these sort of practices in your mind so that you do them without thinking about them, so that because it's often the case that you build code and don't think that you're going to need it later, but it ends up being a critical part of your company's needs. So that's just it's more philosophical than technical advice. So we probably want to again make sure that this works. It should. Okay, it seems like it is. Yeah. Awesome. I like it too. Cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that seems like that's pretty good progress for one day. Unless do you have any questions?
No, not really right now. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't understand everything we did here with the map, dot map. I don't fully get that, but that's okay. We can say something for podcast number 2, right?
Sure. Let me actually, before we go, let me actually request mouse control, and make one change that might make this a little bit clearer, but it's also just another way to write these things. So you can, instead of doing that syntax, you can do end. So this is the exact same thing as what we had above, and I'll type that again so that map b dot to f. Let me actually so these are the same thing, by the way. Line 26 and line 27 through 29 do the exact same thing. And my advice on when to use one or the other is if you're using, like, you might want to start with this syntax here, but if it starts to get too much inside that block, then you sort of switch to this, especially if you're starting to do multiple lines. It makes sense to make it sort of a more expanded thing. Yeah, it's a variable that we made up, and each element of input is going to be assigned to v, and the block is going to be run, and then the value is going to be returned. Let me actually let's switch back, because one thing I was thinking it would be good to do is show you this just in my console, because it's actually, it would be good if you could get a Ruby console on your computer, because you can really, one of the really nice things good things about Ruby is you can play with things.
In the conference. You will now be placed into the conference.
Okay, it started us over again. Hey, it's okay. No. So it one of the really nice things about Ruby is you have this. It's called, you type IRB to get to it. It's the interactive Ruby console, and you can just do whatever you want. I mean, the nice thing about Ruby being an interpreted language as opposed to a compiled language is that it doesn't require you to rebuild your code every time. You can just type whatever you want. Yeah, exactly. So if we can build an array here of items. Let's say it just has some integers in it, and we'll assign that to a. Right. That's just assigning a variable. I can say a.inspect, and that returns a string. And if I say a.map, and then say I plus 5, now that returns another array with every element increased by 5.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
And so I can also do multiply by 5. I can do, I can say, one of my favorite examples is that, like, is the number true or false? Or sorry, is the number odd or even? And so in this case, it's checking to see, is the number even? And so the first number here, well, let's look at our array again. The first number is odd, so it's false. The second number is even, so it's true. And then all the 5 and 9 are both false because they're odd, but 10 is true. So that's kind of interesting. But this is maybe more handy when if you want to say, so map is returns you these results, but another one that works slightly differently is if you say select. This returns you just an array of the original elements that matched the criteria. And so in this case, it's just return me all of the even numbers.
Very cool.
Yeah. So this is the really powerful thing about blocks, is that you can without having to, the traditional way is say I equals 0, while I, for four, there's for loops and while loops and whatever, and you have some counter, and you say like, okay, I equals 0, and you have to keep track of what element you're on, and then you say a dot I in order to access your thing. But you can, and with this, you can even map. You can say a dot map I times 3. That returns you something. Then you could say select I mod 2 equals 0. So which of these are even? And so that returns you all of the numbers times 3. Which of those which of those numbers is even? And you could chain those as much as you want. Yeah. So that's really cool, and I could get a lot more into this with Active Record. It's when you're working with databases, you can do a lot of really cool things in processing data and
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I was just thinking of all the times I've done the, like you say, the for loop and gone through each element and done whatever little check I needed to do. And yeah, it just seems like a much nicer way to do that.
Yeah, totally.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that stuff, but I think we really should probably end for today.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, my brain is officially full.
Yeah. Well, feel free to, if you have any questions that you think of over the week, feel free to ask before next time or while we talk next time. And but yeah, this was fun.
That's awesome, man. Thanks very much for taking the time to go through this.
Yeah, totally. I'm gonna stop the recording now.